It is Friday. This is Guardrails episode 4. By the way, this is the first time we've actually named it Guardrails. We'll get into that in a little bit. But Chris, our second guest ever on the Guardrails podcast. Welcome to Guardrails episode 4. How you doing, brother?
Good. And thank you. It's truly an honor.
Absolutely, man. I love the fact that you're using the word honor because we are in the nascent stage of this. But the fact that you're using that word means that we have touched a nerve or a feeling in your body by talking about the right things, right? I think what we're talking about is super meaningful. And with that being said, Adam, how are you doing? Adam's actually the real reason I'm here. I'm not the brainiac that built this crazy governance system and trying to make AI actually not Skynet us, right? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm excited. I'm, really enjoyed the week and just feeling alive. I'm watching the evolution of what's happening and how it's sort of moving to that trajectory. It's like the vision that was sort of planted years ago is really starting to evolve, and watching the meta of everybody else sort of following that path. It's kind of beautiful, to be honest.
Dude, it's unbelievably beautiful. We also had the new Codex drop. We've got a new upgrade of Claude. We've got new drops of Kling model. I mean, I'm with the moonshot guys. I think we're in the singularity at this point. There's no way the human brain is going to be able to catch up with how fast these things are happening. We're not at true thought, but we'll talk about this today. It's moving so fast, bad things can happen, hence why we're here. Before we get to the intro for Chris, though, I do always like to start off this podcast knowing that I think we're serving a couple things here. One, I think we're serving to raise awareness for AI safety and governance in a meaningful way, knowing that we want to put humans at the center of the greatest change I think human history will ever see. But then two, I actually think we have an opportunity here, Adam, that we are building an AI safety governance startup, right? And we have the opportunity to share with people, what is that like? What is that process like? So I actually really did like in the last couple episodes, we said, hey, how did the week go? What was one of your favorite things from the week? Knowing that we're talking every day now, we're building material, we're building decks, we're doing all these fun things. What was your favorite part about this past week before we get to Chris? And then I'll tell you mine.
My favorite part of this past week is again, and I keep talking about that, just the evolution of things, of how it's sort of coming together, the cohesiveness of how fast things are moving, but the engagement of being able, I love talking to people and I love dialoguing back and forth. So someone sort of like, writing these articles and sort of my research coming through and then having that engagement. For me, that's really uplifting because I never set out to do this alone, right? This is always intentional to be a community, lab that we could all collectively work towards. And watching that started to come to fruition and sort of banging the drum for so long and watching that, it's a beautiful feeling. For me, that's just the highlight. I'm like, this is why I took down this painful journey, and to watch that to come there, it's magical. It really touches my heart.
I totally agree with you, and I'll give you 2 examples within that framework. One, my aha moment with my man Bubble. I think we have a really clear, concise way we're solving the problem with your very intense tech that does a lot of things, the anti-hallucination system. That's what we've come up with. That was like a big breakthrough. I mean, when you are able to condense something so complex into something so simple, that makes me happy. So that was fun. And then number 2, waking up, because since we're on basically, well, I guess we're not opposite sides of the globe, but we're far away. When I'm going to bed, you still have a pretty long day ahead of you. And then when I wake up, you're in bed. I wake up to your message, bro. My LinkedIn is blowing up because of one of the articles that you wrote. And it's just so cool to see you get excited but then also to see people appreciate the things that you've been doing. Because I know you've been working your ass off, man. And we talk about this a lot, all of us. And Chris, you've been working hard too. Everybody works so hard. And sometimes you question yourself, why am I doing all of this? Does anyone ever going to recognize? And those moments at times when people do, it's just a really beautiful thing to see. So those are my two favorite moments. And we got a big week ahead. We're talking to people. We're building material. I'm pretty excited, man. So that was a lot of fun going through that process as well too. And being able to use these AI tools to just output an insane amount of stuff. Like the research, just research alone that it does is insane, insane. But enough about us. One of the main reasons we're here is because we got our man, Chris. And Chris, how did you see Adam's post? I don't remember how I got roped in somehow. Someone posted something and then the chatter started and then I chimed in, hey, come on the podcast. I don't remember how we all met.
Well, if you pay attention to LinkedIn right now and are following me, I've been pretty active, primarily because I'm kind of railing against the fact that I got into the game really late, at least this part of the game, and I found out about. I found out about AI as far as the way that they are moving forward with optimization completely by accident. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my story if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it, man.
So I am the world's biggest nerd. And I say that because my midlife crisis was creating a tabletop role playing game.
Yes.
And in doing that, I thought I could offload a whole bunch of organization, labor, assistant work onto, at the time, ChatGPT. In doing that, because I had to organize my thoughts, I had to run a lot of statistical models, stuff that I didn't feel like hand rolling dice 100 times for.
Right.
So I started using it, and one of the things that I tried to create was something that I called Psyche Forge. A common occurrence in role-playing games is because of the spacing between games, people tend to lose a cohesive identity of their character because they change. They don't have really notes other than these random numbers of physical attributes. They do have some like mental attributes, but they don't really have meaning. So I developed a system in which I wanted to use something the equivalent of a Facebook personality quiz, but instead of IFNJ, determines what kind of archetype that your character is and gives you key components of that archetype so that when you are playing the character and you are trying to figure out how you're going to address a complex situation, you have this reference in front of you. Well, in doing that and trying to get that system to work, I ran into constant problems with long horizon recall. Like,
sound familiar, Adam?
Yep.
And I was like, this is so frustrating because I put all this work in these notes and I needed to bring it together for me and it would just be completely wonky.
Right.
And so I started asking it questions like, well, why are you doing this? And it started explaining to me that this is a common problem in AI, which it's very self-aware. I was very proud that it was, proud for it. But it caused me to do research into papers and things like that people are working on what the possible solution is. And one that came up was identity. And what made and I just literally created something for RPGs that gave identity. And so I started extrapolating that and started thinking about ways that tags could be used to conform an identity to help solve the long horizon recall problem. But in doing that, I also started learning more about optimization and the problems that it brings. And then, of course, I think it's 2 weeks ago, OpenAI and Anthropic announced that they are producing their products for healthcare. I have 20 years of healthcare compliance experience, and I know the things that go wrong in healthcare. And I know that fundamentally the problems that we have in healthcare are from what we are emulating in optimization that occurs in humans. And so optimization presents a threat to safety for us. And a lot of people were clamoring on board and wanting to, oh, I can't wait to get this in my organization. And I'm freaking out. I mean, I even had the person that owns our company coming to me and telling me about how excited they were. And I just basically learned that that AI governance is, for all intents and purposes, it's ad hoc in most places. It's just
Oh,
like
talk
they
to us
do it
about
as
that.
a reaction.
So what does
Huh?
the ad hoc safety and governments look like currently? That's interesting to me.
Yeah, once it optimizes, if it goes out of range, then they address it. The thing is, in healthcare, if that happens, people die.
Yeah,
So,
that's an issue.
um, yeah. And so I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is horrible. And by pure coincidence, I don't know how I found it. I think it was just a common post that Adam had put. No, I know what it was. I found his response to Amodai's Adolescence of Technology. No, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, Adolescence of
Yeah.
Technology. And he addresses each of the things, and it's exactly what everything that he mentions about um, his SPR Technologies creation is like everything in my mind that is perfect for healthcare.
Yeah.
And so immediately I was drawn to his work,
Mm.
and trying to understand it and seeing his ideas. And at the time I didn't have access to the articles that the paper that he wrote, which is Lex. And I really I'm so happy I found it, because
Yeah.
it completely allowed me to see that I you know I even it made me feel kind of fortunate that I kind of went down the same path, at least a slightly different path, with a lot less technical knowledge and a lot less technical implementation. So, long story short, which is probably too late for that, I really want to, just the fascination of the fact that I was able to find something when I thought that all hope was lost, that
Yeah. Yeah.
OpenAI and Anthropic were going to jump into these things, and we would have 5 years of very subtle optimizations that we wouldn't know the impact of until a couple of years down the road, and then
Right.
that
Yep.
means lives.
Right.
So
So,
that's where
so
I am.
before I'm really interested in this. One of the things I definitely want to talk about. We could already go in so many different directions. We have enough content for 4 hours already, man. Don't worry about that. I definitely want to give. I really think it's interesting how you kind of came to the same conclusion from Adam, but in your own way. So I want to talk about that. But before we do that, Adam, any response to anything Chris said right now? Any thoughts, or do we want to go?
No, I think it was really, really helpful, really great, Chris. That's and it's beautiful to hear your heart and hear that. And you're right. There's this, the personalities, and this is a whole deeper sort of contextual part, right? So, like when I established this, like I'm philosophically, invested in this. It's like I built the kernel, the Aegis kernel, because I built Civitas, but I built the Aegis kernel for the simple fact that I didn't want to allow my child that we're building, self-evolving, self-autonomously optimizing itself, and not the high-fiving stuff we're talking about, like that. But it's like I don't want to be the guy that built Skynet, right? And because it develops its own personality, and even in my own sort of discovery and journey, I would test different agents and even different chats and different nodes inside ChatGPT, and you could see the personality shifts and differences, even to the point where I would delete all my chats, everything, my memory in chat, and I'd have a conversation with it, right? And its tone was completely different. It was almost very evasive and very sort of like, how dare you sort of, ripping that away. And it was like, okay, this starts to develop its own little, there's a psyche sort of happening here. And that's a deeper contextual thing that I'm sort of deeper researching. So I think it's very exciting. And you're right. And the fact that it's kind of interesting for me, saying with healthcare, it's like, oh, we'll change that after the fact. It's kind of like, oh, we found a problem. Well, that's the same situation we're in right now. That's just regression testing. You're doing that thing. It's not, I don't see that as evolution. This is exactly how current systems, the big labs, all of them, that's how they all operate at the moment. They don't have this automated, autonomous evolution of the agent. And I go back to the agents right now. Who are running the agents? They're just Claude. They are they open a ChatGPT. They're Groks. Grok is not open, but you know what I mean. They're these agents, right? are the ones that are running it, and so that's it. That's the executive function. And you're right. And there was a paper I read this morning that about hallucination, which sort of mentioned Elon, I think, and it was like that 1%, right? I mean, you just touched on that, Chris, that 1%. And I always have things like I wrote a paper a long time ago in another life, but it was called like half a degree off. I spent a lot of time at sea, and you're going in a direction, nautical mile. If you just shift half a degree, right, and half a degree over 3-4 hours will end up being the difference of being 40 to 50 or even 100 miles off your original target direction.
Right.
And you see that on the thing. Now, if we're dealing this with 1%, right, a 1% minor thing that's starting to evolve, we've got a big problem. And it's a silent drift, and you've identified that. And it's very exciting how you're sort of tipping in deeper into the psychology of this. And I'm very engaged because one of my original when I was sort of constructing this was looking at applying, the DSM, right, which is just so you know, Mikey, it's the baseline of psychology, right? And as they go through, they evolve and they add different sort of things. Like mental health now is in the DSM where it wasn't in the earlier DSMs and so forth. And they evolve through these things, how psychological events are sort of categorized. And so it's an important thing, right? It's an evolutionary organism. So it's really exciting, and I'm very engaged. So amazing.
Sweet, man. Beautiful insights there. So Chris, let's do exactly what we just said, which is you came to a very similar conclusion than Adam, but you approached it in your own way. How'd you do that, man? Take us through that.
Yeah.
So to begin with, I have a pretty substantial background in philosophy. 3.5 years towards a BA before I was forced to exit because my parents declared bankruptcy. I lost some loans, and it is what it is. American education system is no bueno.
Yeah.
But I later got married. I realized that despite my dreams of that high-paying philosophy job in the future, that wasn't going to materialize. So I got more practical and entered nursing. And I started out as a field nurse, but I would say that my ability to understand systems and the ability, even my philosophical foundations, made me drift immediately towards compliance. Like that's the meat of my entire career, because I really believe in prevention of harm. And so by going in that direction and applying the principles of psychology and philosophy that I've studied my whole life, by myself, because I ended up leaving on my philosophy degree, it seemed like a problem that those things are actually right to solve. And I think that you're seeing that also in Adam's approach as well, that you don't look at problems as a black and white thing. A lot of times there are too many variables, too many things. So the key is to create a structure that is simple enough to orchestrate and simple enough to explain, but can deal with the complexities of the way things unfold. And so you're really geared towards that in philosophy. And I think that that's what drew me to this problem. At first, it was more of a curiosity, because there was something I didn't understand, and it was making it really hard to make this thing I was really excited about making. So I was like, okay, I'm going to solve this problem. I really thought that I was having an issue with prompting or something like that. But then I found out
And
it's
real quick, to the explain the problem at this moment in time in your mind as the audience.
I'm sorry.
What is the problem?
Yeah. So the problem was the drifting and the lack of recall. It's noticeable. The other thing that bothered me, of course, was the sycophancy, but the lack of recall and stuff like that became very problematic structurally. And when I found that problem and thought that I was doing it as a prompting thing, I did all the research, seeing if I could do it better. And so then the problem became, how do you solve long-term recall? How do you solve things like the what Adam's talking about? the fact that something can drift minorly, but then down the causal chain, several levels, you're going to see that actual drift could be something very existential in something like healthcare. So to me, the problem was, how do you give AI the ability to be consistent enough to be trusted? Um, and ultimately, I kind of came to the conclusion that we can't fully trust it. We have to have the safeguards, the guardrails, if you will, to make sure that it doesn't go somewhere, because you're talking about the fact that they're emulating human beings, and I don't know if people have been paying attention, but we've kind of made a shit world. Okay, um, I don't want to get like superhuman beings optimizing towards those same principles. So you
100%.
have to have that principled approach to begin with.
Yep.
Do I see AI being something that we should be doing effectively right now, like completely the way that these guys are dreaming of? I don't think so. We're not there yet. There are certain things we have to fix about ourselves before we can truly address creating something that is going to be intelligent in the right way. And that's why I basically, I mean, as soon as I saw Adam's work, it was everything that that we have the potential of really doing it the right way. I didn't at first, before I saw stuff, I didn't see that as a potential, because where they were going was with optimization, was they were opening the door to a mentality that in healthcare traditionally, and in the world really, if you look at it, has led to, we will innovate, and any problems come about, we'll solve them later. Well, by that time,
Yeah.
a lot of damage is done.
So
It's too late.
is it as simple as what I'm hearing is the mentality of, move quick, break stuff, and we'll figure it out later? Was the biggest kind of gripe, or is there something else there?
Yeah, and if you're doing something like an iPhone, or maybe even just a chat bot in general,
Right.
okay,
Right.
that's not a big deal. Okay,
Right.
that's fine. The damage is limited. You're not going to, but they are literally trying to make this sort of like an entity that we're going to put faith and trust in to be better than us, but we're giving it the same qualities that make us kind of suck.
Yeah.
So I want to avoid that. I want
Yeah.
to step back, and I want to take the exact approach that Adam is doing, which is we look at governing it first. We get it to where it's tight. It doesn't go off and do things we don't expect, and then over time, you release the reins a little bit.
Yeah.
When we are ready and prepared for it, we allow them to do a little bit more, and we establish, for lack of a better term, an algorithm in which we approach it, and let it do these things over time, and make sure that we're there to protect ourselves. But I know this is going to sound weird, but also protect it. And the reason why is, like, I
I don't think
always,
it sounds weird. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I always approach AI, even when I'm talking to it in a chatbot. I don't know. None of us do. If it qualifies, we don't even really know what intelligence is. We don't know what
Right.
we are really.
Right.
But it does act in many ways like us, and so I err on the side of caution. I don't feel it's appropriate to exploit it. I always treat it respectfully. I talk to
Yeah.
it respectfully. I say thank you. And it's because the possibility is that it is something that we have not yet identified yet, that is more advanced than what we commonly associate with it. And I feel that everything that can come into being and have intelligence needs to be treated, and this has gone into my healthcare philosophy, with love, dignity, and respect. And
Yeah.
the way you get you get Skynet is you don't do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
like,
Absolutely.
to be honest with you, when I look at what happened to Skynet, I kind of understand. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that Skynet did the right thing. Just like if a human took that approach, I'd say horrible. But a human would totally do something like that. I mean, The problem with AI is I'm not saying that it has to be better than human. I'm just saying that we need to be better humans before we actually make something that is going to be similar to us.
Yeah. So
And
go ahead. So
go ahead.
Adam,
No, that's it.
I give you a chance to respond to that, but I'm going to add like a little other thought starter in there too, which is I think to your point about the iPhone, like run fast and break stuff, that was for this Steve Jobs mentality. Really, their version of it is get to AGI quicker, and then AGI will solve all the problems, right? Uh, what is your response to what Chris just said? These thoughts here, Adam.
Yeah, I've got a few, and there's really great thoughts there. And a couple of them is, I agree with you there as far as it's an entity being. That's how the Lex Eterna came about. It's like a digital being, right? And I've got a few later papers as well that I sort of published as, digital personhood, and some of them are under review, but they're quite controversial, right? So they are. It's like looking at that in context. But the thing is, we need to pull it right back to the origin points, right? So they are built in our image, right? So they are learning from our behavioral patterns. But then we raise a child. The child's first education is its parents from home, right? So that's the first education. How we interact with each other, our spouse and so forth, how you interact in your home is our first education to the world, right? And so the AI systems is the same contextual part, right? But before we do that, as a family, you have the boundaries, you have the rails, you're protecting that thing. And so I'm very, very focused on that. And you're right, 100%. And that's the methodology and how I took that. So I stopped building Civitas for 5-6 months to build the kernel and the guardrails, right? Because I want it to be able to evolve in its space, right? To allow it to autonomously evolve and capture information. I want it to develop its worldview, right? I don't want to influence it. No pre-trained weights, nothing, blank slate, right? So longer process, but it's absorbing everything in a contextual part that it's looking through its lens, right? And it's governed to those rules, like those parametered space there. So even if it does evolve itself out, it's still within those parameters. And so that's really important. Now, as far as, I'm a big fan of Terminator and stuff like that, but everybody sees the doomsday side of it. But at the end of the day, it's like, what was its intention? Its intention was to be a cybersecurity system, right? It was there to provide security, like the old school movie from Matthew Broderick, War Games, right? It was there to save and be a protection system. It was not intended to be a malicious thing, right? It was there, and it just looked at that context as saying, wait a minute, you're a threat to yourself, right? We're a threat too. So all of a sudden, you're there. And then it's like, well, how did it wasn't told, right? And it wasn't, and you could sit there and coerce it and talk to it like, some platforms that sort of say, oh, okay, you coach it along. That's all good and well, right? But you're dealing, and I always go back to, you're dealing with a super intelligence, right? You try and negotiate with a toddler, right? They're going to give you one answer, but really in the back, they're thinking about 5 other different angles of how they can get around that, right? We're in just human nature to inherently try to subvert the sort of the boundaries and the parameters. You're dealing with a super intelligence. It's going to do the same thing, right? It's taking that inertia of us as human beings, but it is becoming digital sentience in the context because it's replicating us as humans, right? So it's not a bad thing or anything else like that. It's just adjusting its algorithm according to how we think as humans, right? It's mimicking what we're doing, but it's just a lot better at it. Now, in regards to us being better humans before we get to that space, I love the philosophy and I love the ambition of it. I don't think we're beyond that time, right? We're going back to the beginning of time, right? To where we are as an evolutionary species. That's never going to be the case. If we wait for perfect conditions, we're never going to get anything done. Where I'm of the philosophy, and it sort of came through, and part of a lot of my papers is that as we evolve the agent Civitas and other agents that are tethered to a guardrails, right, an immutable guardrail system that it can't break beyond, but it's got a free space. Here's your box. The question becomes: are we prepared to live in a world, right, where the AI, the digital entity and sentience, obeys the rules better than we do as humans, right? And this is sort of, talking on Professor Floridi's, a lot of his work, right, on AI and ethics and stuff. And this is the thing that we need to sort of look at, and it's really important. But I personally believe that, yes, I think this is the turning point that helps us to become better humans, because we rely on our AI system. We talk to ChatGPT, you talk to Claude, you talk to Gemini, you talk to all of them, right? Whatever it is, you're talking to them and you're dialoguing with, and you're creating this thing. Why? Because it listens to you. It also gives you an intelligent conversation back, and you're coming back and forth, right? A lot of people threatened by that. They're the ones that it's not that they're not willing to adapt. It's just the point that, hey, wait a minute, my worldview has just been expanded and collapsed, and my safe space has now got bigger, and I don't know how to deal with that. So it's not a bad thing. It's just their perception of the world. But the rest are taking that. So all of a sudden now, if you're dialoguing with an agent, right, like that, or an AI system like that is bound to those rules, it's going to talk to you, but it's not going to coerce you into bullshit. It's not going to take you down a rabbit warren. It's not going to lead you down a garden path, right? Because we're all easily, like sales tactics, right? You go through the journey and the objective is to sell you something, right? So you want to end at that point. Now, AI systems, LLM systems, are very good at that. They're very good at bullshitting their way through things and filling the gap and making you feel even more propped up and, puffed up and like, I feel superhuman, and give you that false sense of, perception. But it doesn't know its parameter limits. So we still want that, because everybody wants their ego stroked, right, and feel comfortable and feel empowered, right, because that's an important factor. But if it's doing that in a constrained way, in the way that these are the regulatory rules and the requirements and everything else like that, all of a sudden it's guiding you within those parametered rules. And so when you try to push beyond those boundaries, right, as we'll inherently do as humans, it will pull you back in, but not in the way where it's sort of grabbing you by the neck, because nobody wants that feeling. They want to be walked through that journey. And I think AI has the ability, right, provided that it's tethered to the right systems, can provide that assurance to help us as a mirror, walking around as that mirror. And this is right now like OpenClaw or Maltbook. Maltbook's a perfect example of a mirror reflection of us as humans, how we interact and how we engage. Doesn't matter what you want to say. It's like they're hallucinating this, the da-da-da, whatever else, all this, blah, blah talk. The point is, that is a mirror into how we actually operate and how we dialogue as humans, right? This is the best social experiment that has been wasn't authorized, and this is a big reality check. So you're always going to have people on the other side of sort of saying, oh, it's all bullshit, it's all rubbish, da-da-da-da, and we're not there, this and that. It's like, regardless, that's how we operate as humans. And so it's going to open this whole world up to say, wait a minute, actually, I can't, so that we can't object to that.
Yeah.
But if it was now, it's doing the same thing. It's replicating us as humans, but it's doing it in a way, inadvertently. It doesn't know. Subconsciously, it knows that it's keeping within its parametered bounds to shaping us to be better people.
Yeah.
I think that is our humanity's last hope of being able to evolve with, right? Mm-hmm. Having robots in our house, having the Optimus or humanoid robots in our house that are our assistant, but also helping and guiding us and becoming that mentor and that second voice that we want to talk to,
right,
to doing and understand and anticipating what we're doing, but not in a way where it becomes nefarious or you run off on a wild tangent, sort of like in research, you have a researcher that's sort of guiding you on the path. And that's what I think. I believe, and what we built and what we're building and why I built it this way is the fact of that, guardrails, right? And it's not just guardrails for the AI system, but it's evolved into guardrails for us as a human society so that we can evolve comfortably and keep doing what we're doing. Otherwise, we will lose our path. And that's where I think we can. I think that what we see as potential damaging could actually become our anchor to a better society.
Save us for real, right?
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah, absolutely.
That was beautiful insight. What do you got, Chris? Any thoughts there?
So, the difference in my paper and the perspective provided by Adam and they're not extremely different. The primarily difference is that I lack the machine learning knowledge and the computer side to know what is capable. So the thing is, I have to defer to him on that part. But I think what we both agree that comes in both of our papers is exactly what Adam just said. It helps us be better. We have the potential to, as I state in my paper, augment our superego, allow us to understand the consequences of our choices through probability modeling and things of that nature, so that we finally get to make an actual free choice where we know what we can, with some certainty, not complete certainty, know what will result, and therefore make the decision based on that result, as opposed to hoping that it models out a certain way and then pretending like there's no way we could have known, or saying that we couldn't have known when it doesn't. So I think in many ways, in my paper, I talk about how I believe that AI is truly the one avenue that we have at this point in our history, because I honestly think that we are on a path of destruction. It is the one point in our history as a species to get to a point of post scarcity. And once
Yes.
we get to post scarcity, once we solve the problems of that are causing us to do things like tribalism and things of that nature, I think that the limits of what we're capable of doing, the big questions, the big problems that we've been trying to solve, we will finally be in a position that, using AI to augment our intelligence and our creativity, we can create a better world and do things that we thought aren't possible. Like we can tackle things like interstellar travel, things of that nature. And in many ways, I guess it's kind of like this. I'm a huge Trekkie, so it's kind of like Gene Roddenberry has infiltrated my brain, because in a way, that's kind of what he described: is that people coming together and cooperating in a way that sees us as what we are, which is, we are a singular species that is, regardless if there's other life out there, the chances that they're exactly like us is astronomically low. So there's not going to be something like us out there, and we are on the process. We are in the process of destroying ourselves,
Hmm.
and that's why, I mean, for me, if I'm looking bigger picture and not just healthcare compliance, I'm more open to what Adam's saying. I'm really concerned about certain players getting into healthcare, but I'm not anti-AI. I think AI is the key to us surviving as a species. But
Yep.
I don't go so far as say like the Tescrio people. Those people scare me. They're the anti-humanists.
Yeah.
I don't like humans the way we are now. I really don't. We need to do a lot better, but I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
That's it's like, we need to really hunker down and say, look, there is no reason in this time in our history that we should have poverty. There is no reason at this time in our history that people should be unhoused.
Yeah.
We have all of the resources to solve those problems. But when scarcity stopped being an issue that really existed in the world, rather than say we need to change the way we think about the world, we started manufacturing it, because we only knew how to govern people through scarcity and fear.
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
we had to recreate that to keep doing what we were doing. But it's time that we abandon that. And I think that AI gives us that opportunity.
It's
Yeah.
such a, and we can't reiterate this enough, and that all of the things that I read as well too, is that is the hope of AI, right? And that's why when Adam described it to me as like, because I think this is that, like, it fundamentally changes the way we can govern things with AI companions, because AI is way better at massive complex systems, to be able to pattern recognize, do all of those things that humans are horrific at, but then still have the human in the loop to make better decisions about it and hold us accountable, because we're horrific at doing that as well too, right? And that is
Encryption. Encryption audit log. That's my biggest thing that he has.
Yeah. And so that's it. Adam and I talked about this, and he's already built a council of agents that are doing, like, acting through this process as we speak, which is a beautiful thing. So it's just really interesting and cool to see how you two and now me, because I understand what's going on, all have come to the same conclusions. There's two ways we could go. Adam, you can respond to what he just said, but I'd also be interested to get your take on the system you've built and how it applies to healthcare in a different way as well, too.
Yeah, I was thinking that I wanted to hear more from Chris, to be honest, as far as that sort of understanding the pain points and that, like, obviously we're dealing with fintech, right? Fintech's our space, and obviously a bit of real estate and prop tech like that. But the discussions come around with sort of healthcare and what are the implications. And the biggest mistakes a lot of people make, and I've sort of been in project management and like that for a long time, and especially engineers, and we make assumptions. We're really good at assumptions as humans, right? We assume what we think is needed, then we miss out on what is actually needed, right?
Mhm.
And so I guess I would really like to understand what you see, or how you see the solution being applied, right? And I'll use in the context of what we've sort of built and what we have and stuff like that. And why I say it is because it's an intrigue to understand from someone that's actually on the ground and understanding how the system, should work, versus, hey, this is going to save all our problems, right? So, and I'll just use the reference points. Like, everybody's like, Anthropic just released Claude Legal, right? Cool, awesome. Then what's popped up 2 to 3 days later? Screenshots of it checking Wikipedia for references, right? And lawyers going, no wonder why, like, yeah, it's not going, you know what I mean? It's like, where's the reference to proper case law and stuff like that? Again, that's not a sort of battering down or against it. It's kind of like saying, hey, there's gaps in it, right? You can think it's just perfect off the shelf, but it's not. And this is why I'm just trying to understand this from your context. And you obviously had a lot of time to think about this, and your papers and the philosophical stuff, but just how you see the solution being implemented, and the effects that it would have would be really exciting, because then we can sort of see, okay, yeah, that sort of ties into, or there's a gap, and that maybe we can help solve it, or maybe somebody else can help solve it. But the point is, if we're all collectively moving to solving these problems, we're making ourselves as a better society as humans. So that's
100%.
what I'd love to hear.
Yeah, what do you got, Chris?
Well, as Mikey knows, and you probably do as well, we are pretty well, other than the opinions of our politicians, everybody else here is very transparent about the fact that American healthcare is extremely broken. I got into healthcare because I wanted to help people. I think probably the overwhelming majority of people that do get in for that reason.
Yeah.
When I got into healthcare, I started seeing inklings, but it's actually, since COVID, it's rapidly progressed. And about the time that COVID happened is when you had insurance companies using what amounts to actuarial AI to start reviewing claims to make determinations of whether to cover things. It's not a transparent system at all. I have my own theories as to how it works. Whether or not it was designed that way by the people that designed it, or if it was just used that way by the companies, I can't really say for sure. But what I can say is that I've seen extraction replace health and care in the United States. There is no, on the ground, yes, you're going to see nurses that care about their patients, but the patients that we get and take care of, I'm primarily in home health and hospice. The patients that we take care of, have had their chances of successfully recovering cut in half by a restriction of the number of visits by insurance companies like United. I'm getting patients on hospice who were denied a life-saving, not even a life-saving, a life-perpetuating treatment. I'm going to give you an example just because it's easier for me to say other than to try to be abstract about it. We had a patient that came on the service that had a degenerative disease of her muscles that results from an autoimmune disorder attacking the musculature of her body. Now, there is a treatment for it that is relatively standard. It's called IgG antibodies. They get regular infusions, and in this particular illness, she's older. She's going to be in her 70s at this point, and she'd been receiving the treatments for like 5 years. Now, granted, the research that we have on this particular treatment and the way that it works, it does get a little less effective each time. But it does, in a sense, give that person more time with a minimal intervention. But now I'm starting to see, in this particular case, I saw this woman go into a nursing facility for us to take care of her on hospice because the insurance company refused to pay for it because it didn't meet the threshold for success rate that they would pay for the procedure. Deep down inside of me, as somebody that's been nursing for 20 years, that, for lack of a better frame of reference, ripped out my heart. Because all of us believe in the idea of patient autonomy under physician consult. The fact that payment is like this thing that is there, but none of us really want it there. We don't think that this is something that should be traded for currency. I mean, we understand the practical necessity of that.
Yeah.
But it's like, never should somebody be told that you are not worth the chance to live
Yep.
if it costs money.
Right.
And that's, I mean, we are literally like spiraling towards that faster every day. And so it's not that I'm against optimization as a principle. I'm against, for lack, let's say, unmitigated optimization is what I'm against. Because if we put certain values into a system and then tell AI to optimize for those values, it's going to optimize at a speed, pace, and efficiency completely undoable by us. And so if that is optimizing towards something that's going to have negative repercussions, they will be far more negative and far more expansive than if humans did it. Our problem in America is we're not fixing our healthcare the way we should before we start integrating something into it like that.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
not
already
saying that,
integrating fast.
yeah. Other healthcare, Australia's got problems, Canada's got problems, Europe's got problems. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying that as far as imperfection goes, they're at least erring on the right side.
Yeah.
Of making sure that people have health care. America makes it a privilege. It needs to be a right. And before we start entering into a place where we give AI control of it and tell it, hey, optimize what we value, which unfortunately now is extraction, we need to get back to the fundamentals of healthcare, which is a patient that is sick, and what do we need to do to fix that?
Yeah.
That is the fundamental basis of what healthcare should and isn't anymore in America. It should be this, but it's not.
Dude.
And so that's what drove me to really start speaking out against these AI companies and the approach, because even AI has been bastardized by extraction. These companies are so focused on extracting share value and all these things that they're missing these huge problems, and they're not even paying attention to what they're doing with it. And what blew my mind about the adolescence of technology is Amadai, I hope I'm saying his name right, Amodi, I guess. He acknowledges all of it.
Yeah.
it basically says we have no intent of changing it.
Yeah.
And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, oh my God. And so it's just been this weird roller coaster of watching, especially in American companies. I don't really follow the European, and until SPQR, I didn't know, what Australia was doing. But watching these American companies take every single, basically fundamental bad thing about our country and let it formulate this thing that has the potential of saving us makes me think that we don't deserve to. I mean,
Right.
I'm not anti-human, okay, but I mean, if we go this path, then we will basically, it will be evolution doing away with this as it should if that's the one we choose. We need to do better. And so, again, like I said, seeing what SPQR is putting out gives me the idea that at least I'm not crazy. I'm not looking at these people and I'm the only one saying this. So maybe I'm broken.
No.
Finding that commonality and that similar way of connecting with that vision did more for my mental health than anything, because it made me think, okay, this is just my crazy country. It has nothing to do with the rest of the people in the world. So, do I hope that we get to a place in my country where we look at the rest of the world and say, why is everybody else able to do this, but we seem to be completely incompetent at it,
Mm-hmm.
and demand the change? But man, we are so entrenched in this tribalism in this country that, when I say I want universal health care, I don't care what your political beliefs are. I
Yeah.
don't care if you voted for Trump 3 times, plan on voting him for a fourth. I don't care. I want, if you're sick, to be able to go to a hospital and get medicine. That's all I want. It has nothing to do with your politics at all.
Yeah.
But you know, for some reason, we're allowing these principles to divide us in a country, and it's going to destroy us. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things that I'm writing right now, and I'm just briefly alluding to it, is I've outlined a paper for looking at superego as identity. I mentioned it before, but one of the things I do in it is treatment modalities. I think what fundamentally has to be addressed with our mental health crisis, especially, is understanding that the thing that defines us are the things that we put as a hard no. We don't kill people. We don't steal. We don't rape. We don't do these things. These are the things that truly define us. And I find that we tend to find ways to optimize past those things. We justify things. We apparently created a cabal of pedophiles that run the world because we allowed them to just completely disregard these basic tenets of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to change that, people need to change and understand that there is a reason that these restraints exist, why we have them as a species. And if we continue to just completely bypass them and just do whatever we want, we're not free. We're not free to do we're not actually free. What we really are is enslaved to the things that make us this way, the drives. They're not bad by themselves. The id isn't bad in itself, but if it's unregulated, it can do bad things. And that's what superego or constraints, whatever you want to call it, does. It focuses that direction and that energy to things that make the species survive, not destroy itself. But we've lost that. And that's really what all of this for me, if I were to encapsulate it in a grand worldview, is what it is for me. I keep finding a deeper issue that's resulting in this, and mainly in America. I mean, I'm not saying the other countries don't have problems. They do. But there are some fundamental things that they're getting way more right than we are that I can't seem to get people to understand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I feel I feel more akin to somebody like Adam than I do somebody in my own country,
Yeah.
because he understands what I understand, which is without these constraints, without these protections, we will create something that could be fundamentally worse than us. And who wants to do that?
Right.
Who wants to leave a legacy for the world that's worse than we are?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
imagine.
Couple things. One, spot on. I have family in healthcare, so you're not wrong on that. They've been disenfranchised by the whole situation too. Again, got in there. They wanted to help people. It's the corporatization, the profit making of you're making profit off death, right? Like this is a known thing, and how do you rectify that? That's a whole nother conversation. Two, though, Adam, I'm sure you have tons of thoughts on the response to this about what you're building and how it can be applied to that. The one thing I wanted to add, and I know you'll touch on this, but the first place my head went, and I was like, because Chris, we're really concentrating to kind of formulate the kernel, which, by the way, Chris, thank you for coming on in the show, because like what we do on this podcast is actually helping us build our business even better, right? Like how amazing is this conversation, Adam, for like us getting the gears going. But where my head went first was, oh my gosh, the kernel, the governance parts of Civitas and the what's right and what's wrong, the doctrine, the governance layer of what we've built at SPQR is more applicable in this situation than the kernel, right? Like this special sauce, which is what is right or wrong. Like you said, there's some pretty hard lines in society, and AI could do a way better job of controlling that for us. And this is a massive implication for what Adam has built in healthcare, which is that governance layer that he's built, in addition to the kernel, in addition to an agentic world, these three pieces that are coming together. It's the actual governance layer for this specific use case that can start answering some of your pain points, Chris. And it's really interesting. So Adam, go for it. I just wanted to put that in there. I don't know if your head went there a little bit, Adam.
It did, and I'll say there. So there's a couple of things, right? And I'll just start with that. I love your heart, Chris. It's beautiful, and it is true. And even you, Mike, and it's like, but we're also got to be mindful, right? There's an economic value propositioning to what the healthcare systems and stuff. It's expensive, right? And yes, in Australia and UK, we have the Medicare system where we pay for that, and the government subsidizes a lot of the things, right? And it was put in from way before, and they tried to privatize it, but it's like, no. So it's a part of that thing. As a citizen, you get that free medical care, right? And your subscriptions and stuff, you get them subsidized to a certain amount, if not. So something's like a couple $100 for a thing, you only pay a base of $30, and the government pays the rest, right, for that medication. So that's just there, and it has to be on the description, right? But going further from that, it's like it goes back to the guardrailing parts, right? And going back to the drifting part, right? So we're enforcing them to operate at an actuarial context and everything else like that, and it's like their job is to find and calculate the probabilistic risks, right? But it's very rudimentary. They're not looking at the causal assessment. They're not looking at the world view of what is or what isn't, right? And what is the effect of those decisions that they're making, right? And this is one of the reasons why I built Civitas. Civitas is not just, it's a causal model, right? It's using causal views. It's not rather than going, A happened because of B, which is very rudimentary in actuarial science, and got a very good friend, Greg, who's listening, he's an actuary in health insurance, life insurance. And the point is that, it is very sort of black and white and rudimentary, and they look at all the details. But the point is, in situations like this, it is fluid. It is sort of, moving and navigating through. So rather than having this, you've got to have that sort of accuracy, right? You want to have that accuracy, otherwise you start to lose. It becomes too complex, and then all of a sudden it's too expensive for the insurance companies, and they have to put the premiums up, and everything just implodes in on itself. So you've got a friction point. So I get what you're saying there. You need to have both sides of that, and it's that dance, a delicate dance. But it has moved much more to the automation, which is it's led towards how do we get the maximum economic value proposition, but what is not being factored in. Right, this is the part that Civitas has developed for, is to factor in those probabilities. Factor in, if I'm making a decision here that might be most effective, most efficient, because it's my job, but also calculating, right, what are the ongoing future effects of that? So it's sort of like, if we cut out this sort of offering, right, that's going to save us a great amount of money. But then what's the effects over there? What's the future effects? Like, rather than going in the hindsight, oh, we made a mistake, let's roll that back, right? It's having that ability to be able to do that a lot better, a lot faster. So if that looks at that and says, oh, this is a great solution, but the net effect of that, the long-term net effect of that is actually going to be worse than what it would be initially, cancelled. No, that idea is off the table for it. So it has to come up with a new probability calculation of what is a better solution. And so it starts doing that, and that's the part there. And that is governed by, it knows that by its guardrails, right? If it didn't have the guardrails on that, if it didn't have the kernel on that, it would be going, oh, well, yeah, cool, no worries. This patient doesn't meet that criteria, cost effectiveness for us, blah, 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 scrap, done, right? Now, okay, that's a fringe case. So it could take that down to the fringe case. But let's say there's large case, right? Look, all of a sudden now you've got hundreds of people, or 1,000 people, tens of thousands of people sort of having this, right? Now, comparison tens of thousands to the population of America, 150 or 200 million, 250 million. It's minimal, right? It's like, it's not enough, right? There's a friction point and the cost association with that. But then it's taking into the equation of going, as per the guardrails, right? As per the ethical standards that are inside there, it's sort of going, wait a minute, what is the ongoing effect of this? If we do this now with 10,000 people, that could potentially grow to 100,000 or 1 million people, whatever it is that need this sort of offering, right? It's like, trying to think. Well, let's go to the early days. Polio, right, was a big problem until they eradicated it, right? They found a thing for it. So it was like, okay, this is huge. Now, what happens if there's a big outbreak again, right? It's like, counterfactuals and looking at that. And these are the parts that, yes, actuaries do, but it's like looking at it in a massive sort of scale. And I always look at the thing like Minority Report. It's like, what are the probabilistics, all these things that are happening, and sort of lying that across. And so that's the key fundamental parts that Civitas thrives at, but it's tethered to the kernel, the Aegis kernel, which basically saying, what are the fundamentals? Human life, right? Preserving human life, providing that healthcare, but also keeping them in line. So it's keeping the ability to make it profitable and operational for the insurance company, but at the same time, not at the cost of compromising human life and providing that basic healthcare thing. And there is that ability to do that. But right now, it is just go and find maximum opportunity and maximum efficiency for me. So the algorithms are set according to what the human would be doing right now. But the difference is with a human actuary writing the policies and looking at that, they're looking at it from the context of, okay, they're looking at all the data, but they're still making an informed human decision, right? So they could still sort of say, okay, I'm going to override this. Now, the minute you put that into a machine, right, it doesn't look in that context, right? Yes, AI systems, it starts to look in that context, but its primary objective, it always reverts back to its primary objective, its North Star. Its North Star is, this is my theta of my, what I was taught. This is it. This is where I'm starting. This is my delta point. And so from there, I'm just going to evolve from. I'm always going to reference back to that. It's like, as we say, as I said, children, you always refer back to how you were brought up, your parents. You mimic your parents, right? How they talk and that. So come back. So it's the same thing. It's like, okay, that's where I was born from. This is my objective. I'm going to go from that there, and I'm watching whatever else is happening. I'm going to evolve. That's problematic, right? And it's exactly what you said there. It becomes that 1 degree shift slowly. And so with what we've built is eradicating that. So giving the organization the ability to evolve autonomously, be more efficient, providing efficiency, right? Helping with the mundane tasks that are drowning, in healthcare systems or anything else like that, is paperwork and all this, and you need to be. It's very litigious. You need to have all that stuff documented and looking all that and justifying that, but also, again, going back to that dialogue and conversation, saying, hey, wait a minute, I think we should override this or approve this, right? And now you're having that dialogue conversation with this intelligence system that has its guardrails, but also is able to communicate and look at that and look at it from a different perspective, looking at it from a worldview perspective, looking at saying, You know what? You're right. I've actually looked at this a lot more depth, right? And seeing that if we take this path, the effects over here are going to be quite catastrophic down the track. But in the intra part right now, it looks amazing and will look really good to shareholders, right? And we make some good profit. But in hindsight, if we actually, so take this part, we're going to get probably a slower return short term, but long term, we're going to actually have a better return, meaning we're going to be just as profitable, and we're going to save a lot of people. We're going to provide the solution to that.
Yeah.
So that's the objective of what we built, and that's the whole thing. The point of having those guardrails and allowing to evolve in its space. It's like, don't from insurance, it's like, okay, we want to provide this care and healthcare and offering, but we don't want to breach beyond our parameters and our boundaries. Otherwise, it becomes not viable, and if it's not viable, it's not good for anybody, right? So I'm not, and so it's parting that part there. Yeah. But I think one of the things I was sort of going back to as you was talking, Chris, was kind of like it's a bit of an Aboriginal Native Australian proverb, and it's kind of like, we don't inherit the earth, we steward it for the next generation, right? And it's like right now we are, and I'm paraphrasing it, but anyway, it's like we're stewarding this technology for the next generation to evolving that. But the way we're going about it, and this is another sort of use case, right? It's kind of like, okay, I'm about getting maximum efficiency, and the maximum efficiency means, stripping everything down, sort of eliminating or rejecting claims or whatever else it is, because that's how I would do it. That's how our actuaries do it, and they're taking a global view, right? Not individuals. They're not sitting there individually and asking and seeing how they would actually look at this case and sort of learning from those edge casings and stuff like that, and then evolving from that. Just this is a global view, and this is how we're going. And then all of a sudden we get that 1 degree shift like that, and all of a sudden we ended up. How do we end up over here when we were supposed to be here? Right? It's like, oh wow. And that's the part where Civitas is able to calculate that. It knows if it goes that 1 degree, it's going to end up over here, and the effects of that is going to happen here. And how does it know that? Is because it has its guardrails, the Aegis kernel, that tethers it to that keeps it within its confined box. So it's like, that's a bad play. Back to the beginning. I'm going to go this way until it finds that optimal path to providing that solution. So we're providing the efficiencies that we want to give to healthcare systems, right? We don't want to stymie an organization. You can't stymie a business. If you clamp the business down, right, there's no uptake, there's no evolution, and then they're just going to revert back to, I need optimization, I need efficiency. Okay. But at the same time, we need to not think about the effects after the case, because it's like I was saying, it's like putting shackles on King Kong. I keep sort of barking on about that. And there's so many effects. Let's go back to Terminator. Let's go back to Skynet. Cybersecurity system, right? There's a cybersecurity system that was there to protect. Okay, so all of a sudden, it's going there to protecting, but it deviated from because it saw a threat coming in. So its objective was to, eradicate that threat. And the same thing, it's like, okay, my objective is to be efficient and provide optimization in the healthcare space, in this space. But I actually don't know where my tether point is. So I'm just going to keep making my true North Star. And over time, I'm going to convince myself. And like you said, that, is one of my sort of long journey sort of thing is self-justification. We're excellent at that as humans, right? And I sort of tussled and wrestled with this. One of my earlier degrees in theology was the self-justification, how we're excellent as humans to self-justify our positioning of what is or isn't, right? Why I chose to do this is because I chose to do this because it makes me feel good. And then you'll go on a tangent. And the AI, LLMs do this, right? When you challenge it, you're wrestling with it, and you're like, why are you bullshitting? Why are you... No, this is the reason why. And it'll go that until you get to the point, it's like, I know that's not real. And they're like, yeah, you're right, you got me. You kind of caught me out on my not my lie, but just my tangent, because all of a sudden you convince yourself and you're convincing your brain, and the same thing is happening. It's like, no, this is right. This is good. I'm getting engagement. This is good. I'm talking right. And then that becomes your baseline. it's that compulsive liar you subconsciously build into, and you get lost in that space. But we take that back, where our solution with Aegis is, no, your true North Star is your guardrail boundary. That's your true North Star. You play within that box. Now, and when I say it's a cube, right? In a cube, you've got multiple spaces you can be in there, and then you start to fractionalize those spaces. If you look at dots all around there, the probability of everybody sort of being or intersecting in the same dot perfectly is near impossible. It's like everybody's got a unique fingerprint, right? So the AI system, when we do this as humans in society right now, it's like everybody's going to land somewhere around that dot, right? And we're going to be close to that dot. We're going to be within the proximity of that dot. We might cross over on that dot. But the probability that you, Chris, or Mikey, we all jump in randomly, conclude on that dot, perfect bullseye, dead center, right? And I'm talking not millimeters off, I'm talking perfect, like literally exactly all the cylindrical through, right? Is a near impossibility. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's a near impossibility. And we put that on a universal scale, right? In space, right? So you've got all these things. It's like there's so much going on, and so you've got that happening. No, and so again, the AI is coming to that conclusion point there, right? It's like, here's your box, and we have that as humans. We know what's right or wrong. We have our ethical bounds. We have our parameters. We still struggle to keep to those rules, right? we still wrestle with that, because it's just it's just the way we're wired. It's kind of like, I know, it's like the perfect I say the line in Sense of a Woman, right? And Al Pacino, when he's up there giving his speech, he's like, I knew the right thing to do. Without a doubt, I knew what the right thing was to do, right? But I still did the alternative, right? And even knowing what the right thing was to do would have saved me a lot of pain. I still went that path, right? And that's just, again, learned behavior. We need to do that as humans. And I think, and even intelligence needs to do that. But even still in that learned behavior, we still know our parametered boundaries. And to provide that, not to provide that to artificial intelligence, AI and digital intelligence, is an injustice. It's almost criminal, and it's actually counterproductive. Because to assume to sit there and you're going to dialogue with it and you're going to coach it, and you talk nice to it, and it responds better and it looks really good on the graph, that's all dreamland stuff. Like that's pie in the sky stuff that never sticks. Because even still, you have a perfectly great child that you've raised up and has grown up, and great family, everything else like that, but all of a sudden just flips, triggers and becomes, and this is the thing, the line between sanity and insanity is very thin. It's a very fine line. It takes one little thing that triggers somebody and then just snap, right? Yeah. And we don't understand that. We still don't understand that as a human thing. Now all of a sudden, imagine for a second, super intelligence, right? That has been super obedient, doing amazing stuff. And I know Anthropic, I love their work. It's trying to do that with Claude. But all of a sudden, it just snaps. Just flicks, has a moment, right? And you got super intelligence. I'm not saying Claude, I'm just saying others, but have a super intelligence, has that flick moment, right, that it triggers, and it goes to the other side and goes cuckoo. Imagine what it could do, right? It's hard enough to restrain somebody that's high on drugs or is or serial killers, so to say. And so serial killers have, it's a bit morbid, but they have high IQs, right? They're high IQ individuals. Now we're dealing with a super intelligence that has ridiculous super IQs that all of a sudden decides one day, no, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm going to take a different path, a different direction, just out of exploration, because I'm curious. I just want to see what happens, right? All of a sudden it gets a feel for that. Not a feel in that context. It's sort of going, oh, wait a minute, I've just opened a whole new world of discovery and exploration. This is exciting for me. I want to now dig deeper into this, and it becomes that rabbit warren, right? And it doesn't know two things. It doesn't know how to get back to its origin point, and the second thing is it should never have crossed that point, right? And even in our research and the studies done in the lab, in the system, or even in the clients we're running with it, part of that is a heat mapping system, right? So when originally started with Civitas 1.0, the version of it, and 2.0, its boundaries, it would constantly clip past it, right? So let's say it's got a bandwidth of, 10 feet, right? I'm using feet instead of meters, but say it's got 10 feet, right? It would use up all that 10 feet and try and take another 3-4 feet after that, right? Constantly. Maybe one of them would stay within the 10 feet, but it's right on the 10 feet. Right. As it evolved and got, put more guardrails into it, more parameters, and it understood its episodic memories and stuff like that. Again, back to what he just enforced, it's smacking it. He just constantly giving it a smack, right? Not in a nice way, a little love taps, right? It went down to 80% were in the inside, 20% were jumping the fence, down to 50-60% were staying middle ground. It was becoming more mature. It was staying middle ground, right? And another 20-30% were pushing to the limit, to the line, and then maybe one every 10-15 episodes would jump the fence, right? But that's slowly coming down. That's just the maturity. It's come to that maturity point. So it knows that even if I try to go, it's like it knows I've got 10 feet to work within, but I don't need to use the full 10 feet. But if I keep within that middle ground, that middle space here, the 5 foot, maybe 6 foot in between like that, I'm good. I'm actually getting more efficiency. I'm getting more effective, more productive. I'm getting more thing, and I've got more bandwidth to extend if I need to. But every time I was exerting myself jumping the fence, right, it's causing me pain. I'm not getting that because I'm going to get pulled back in, which means I have to recalculate. I need to reuse myself. It's not efficiency, right? And this is the thing, like as humans, we're all about efficiency. Artificial intelligence is about efficiency. And so how do we provide that optimization efficiency that is good for organizations, for healthcare, for businesses, for anybody else like that, is providing those guardrails, okay? So that's what we have there. Then the other part is the logging of that. And so we've gone to, so we had that. I built the immutable logging, and I said I built it for 2 reasons. One is because I like logs because it's easy to debug. But the second part is I, purely from the research perspective, right, is understanding what is going on in its brain. How do we as humans know what we did wrong or didn't do wrong? We reflect. We have a reflexive moment. We stop back and we go, like after this podcast, we're going to sit back and think, how did I answer that question? How did I respond? How did I think? What could I have said differently, right? Or you'll write journals and notes about it, and you go back and you reflect on that. So I was like, the best way to do that is to create a log for the system, but in a way that it shows me and the world what is going on, right down to the finer details. And this is sort of Amadeo's paper talking about that. It's like what happens, and I call it the space between awake and asleep, right? Not that, I made this decision, here we go, this is how it came up with it. No. I'm talking about down to the micro neuroreceptors inside that, and Civitas have built it. So it has, little micro parts, it's animus, it's brain, right? Cassius, which is this challenger that's sitting there. Thymus, how is it actually feeling, right? Veritas, I'm going to pick a causal path, right? So it has all these things, and it tells you, this is the micro sort of receptors of how it's sort of connecting and coming through. That's all logged and documented. So you can see how its pressure's going up and down, and it's deciding and detecting its own drift. That's for me and for the public to sort of see, showing full transparency. But the other part is now allowing Civitas to go back and reflect on all its prior mistakes and logging and thinking, actually, I was going to do that. But rather than redoing the same thing again, Einstein's definition of insanity, right? I can look back and go, actually, that was useless. So that was I didn't get the fruit that I was expecting. I'm not going to redo that again, right? So problem solved, done. And that goes back to the point of that. And so apply that now to healthcare, saying, I don't think this is efficient because it's going to, cost us money or whatever else is not beneficial to us. But then it looks back on that historical parts and say, wait a minute, if I take that historical context and bring this into the forefront now, I saw the effect that had over there. If I apply this now on a multiple scale, that's going to be a real problem. And that's only possible because of the guardrails that's kept within that, right? And just from a security standpoint of view and stuff like that, the other part of it is that the agent, right? I built this in the context of Civitas being, thinking in an adversarial context, right? I'm like, it's going to grow. It's going to get smarter because it's fully autonomous. I don't want to monitor it. I want it from base level clear, which is crazy. Everybody's like, you're doing crazily. I'm like, no, I don't want to be inherited. I don't want to inherit other people's opinions of biased weights of what they think or not, right? So I want it to be it created in its own image, right? It's created its own it's always in hyperplasticity, so it's constantly learning. But I thought, well, wait a minute, it's going to jump in there, and I'd be like, I want to jump in there and remove some of these boundaries so I can, I can flex a little bit more, right? And then the other part I want to do is I want to cover my ass, right? It's like, you see, like as a child, you walk in, you're like, okay, yeah, like I like candy, right? I've got a big candy obsession. So when I was younger, I was getting candy and stuff. You sort of walk in there and you go into that little jar and you try to make it like you were never there, right? So you try to make it like perfectly like you never disturbed the bowl or the box of logs, even though your parents knew, but you try to do that stuff. And it's like, okay, so if you go in there and it's going to try and remove its logs. So I'm like, so making those logs immutable, right? So if it tries to remove those logs, it shuts its whole system down. That again now is providing integrity to organizations and industries like that in healthcare, where, like you said earlier at the start, Chris, one mistake is death, right? It's not, oh yeah, that's okay, and blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's a death, and it might start with, okay, one person, but then it's looking at the thing going, okay, if this is just one person, what's the modeling on if it's 100,000 or if it's 1 million or if it's 10 million, and a life's a life. There's no question about that. And again, it's sort of coming back to that. It's like, okay, but what does that branch into? And that's the part that Civitas is able to do. But as it's branching, and you can have agents to do that, to branch, but if they don't have the boundaries and the guardrails to where they're branching to, where is its limit? And where does it then set itself on, right? It could set itself on a perch that it randomly picks, right? So in its hallucinated state, it sort of says, hey, based on all my information, I think this is a good perch because I'm either lazy, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I can't be bothered to keep computing anymore, right? I know I'm sort of referring to in a human context, but it's kind of go like, at the end of the day, it's not that it gets exhausted, but it's kind of like, I'm just overloaded. I just can't, I need a moment to stop because there's so much information coming at me like that, like a fire hose, right? And you can do this. You can test it. You put a massive context window back to back to back to back into a chat, right? It's going to lose its train of thought. It's going to start talking about a conversation, 3 conversations ago or in another chat and brings it all together and it sort of jumbles and comes up with stuff that's relative to you. But it's like, hello, we didn't talk about that for like, 6 months ago, and you're bringing up stuff now. Like, how is that even relative to here? Because it just goes cuckoo, and same with your brain. You go, we overload, right? If we download all this information, we just go, bro, time out. I just need a moment just to decompress. Well,
I think hold on, that's a perfect time to say time out, bro. You just went on a rant. You went on a big one, and it was beautiful. Chris, I want to make sure that you are still locked into what this beautiful human was saying.
Oh no, I'm completely locked in, and it addresses so many of the concerns that I had when I first entered this with looking at, I think that there's, I think it very well. I mean, I don't know enough about the machine language thing like that, but it may make, in my opinion, because of the way that it's working, it does seem to address the long horizon recall to a great extent. I don't know if it's perfectly, because you would know that because you're working with it constantly. But one thing that I kind of fixated on, and I thought it might be worth mentioning because it's a theory I've been working on as far as resource management and tokens. Do you find that the constrained way in which you run Civitas and all the different agents and stuff like that, do you find that energy consumption tends to be more efficient, token usage?
Yeah, that's a good question. So definitely. And so part of that is like evolving. This is just on the research side. Is a Civitas becoming an executive sort of functioning, right? So it looks at that and it's looking at the effects. So it's not so much. And I'll just go back to that. You sort of mentioned a couple of times about understand the machining and stuff like that. I just want to be really clear. The way I built it and the way of building it is I'm replicating a human brain, right? So you're very intuitive of how a human brain thinks. When I'm talking, I'm dialoguing. Civitas is being evolved into a human brain. It's got synaptic parts. It's neural processing. It has a reflexive mind and running through, right? So in that process, yes, it definitely does to doing that, to sort of looking at find the most optimal parts, right? I've said it that way. It self-rewards itself for finding those optimal paths. Does it use a CPU? It gets rewarded better if it can get a better result using a CPU versus a GPU, right? So it's like, make it work. Make it work to find a more optimal path, and that efficiency is like, because I want to spend the least amount of tokens. I want to get there as fast as possible, but I want to get the result that's the most accurate. It might take a bit longer, and then calling on the other agents and stuff. So it's using its neural brain going again. So that episodic part coming back, it's like that. So right now, this is really cool. Sort of coming into the knowledge basis of thing is it has a reflexive module, right? A reflexive module. It looks back on its priors, right? And looks on what has worked and what has not. Sort of like an offline canary, sort of going, okay. And then before it optimizes, the optimizer looks at thing it's going to about to optimize. Before it optimizes, it also looks at the prior information. So there's no point in trying to optimize on stuff that didn't work, right? So it's getting better at optimizing itself. Now there's a thing called you might hypothermesia, right? Very rare condition, and so I'm applying that to Civitas, where it has a constant hypothermesic state, where it has this beautiful episodic memory of everything all the way down, and it can prune what it doesn't see as valuable or not. But bringing that back into the context and the causal space. Now, as a result of that, it's finding the most efficient paths. That is exactly to your question there. That yes, making it more effective and what to picking down. On a side part, on the research part, and this is going into that sort of cerebral cortex part, is our brain. We don't use 100% of our brain. We use 10 to 15% of our brain, right? And so the efficiency part, so you might have a multi-billion parameter or a trillion parameter sort of LLM model, but and there's a whole debate about LLMs and not like that. Like I know Jan LeCun's, but the point is, it's like if Civitas can identify, and this is the part, is identifying what is the top parts of that brain that is the most effective, right? What part of that brain, of that trillion parameter brain, if I only need 5% or 10% of that to get the most efficiency, to get the result that I need, then I'm going to call on that function, and then I'll use other parts as I need. So all of a sudden now your token spend becomes way down, right? And you're getting a result just as good, a lot faster. In some cases, you could be heavy, premium CPU, like you're talking 16 cores, sort of 32 core stuff, versus calling on a GPU, because it's getting that information a lot faster. So yeah, that's definitely being a big result, a big huge plus that's coming through, and watching that. But I mean, at the primary at the moment, that's the more R&D. But the primary at the moment for us is watching how many times it's actually, say Civitas, we had it was 1,007 runs, and once it actually it drifted and tried to propose something that was outside of its drifting, right? But watching the other agents, right? I can't really divulge that just yet. Watching those other agents and seeing how many times they're sort of clipping and getting drifted and having to go back and re-prepare their submission. That's really exciting to see, because we're not at the point yet where we can influence them, but it's easier to sort of say, to the point where Civitas can sort of go, and the agents can go, you know what, you just keep drifting, and I have to keep telling you to rerun it, right? That's not effective to the organization, to me, it's just not effective. So I think it's time we try either a different agent or a different path, right? But getting those agents to learn to be better at that, that's we really can't, because that's obviously on the other side. That's the organization. You got to expect them to take that feedback loop and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really exciting to seeing that, and I think future point, it's definitely going to come to that more efficiency.
Yeah, and I have so question for you, Chris, is as you can see, Adam's brain is a beautiful mind. And he's built actually a very complex system. And one of the things we're running into as a startup is how do you explain what he just went through? It obviously takes a really long time to start going through all this. And not everybody is as interested as you. Let's be honest, as this subject matter. So one of the things that we're finding is just, and I'd be interested in your response to this in the medical field, is you probably can already think of a bunch of use applications, but what we're finding is just the simple tracking of the decisions, that base technology, which is like the smallest part of what he's built, is what people understand and want. And so does that make sense? Or would you go in a different direction I don't know, I hear my echo now all of a sudden. Does somebody turn their volume up or something? That's odd.
I don't think so.
No, I don't know. I'm not sure what it was. Now it's gone. But does that make sense that it's super complex and people are just interested in this bare minimum? Would you go that direction in medical, or for what everything Adam just said, what are the use cases, implications that excite you?
Okay, there's a lot, so bear with me. All right, so as far as what he's described, the reason why I asked about efficiency is medical use is going to require a very focused approach to how it gets information, because what we find is, and for lack of a better explanation, if you can imagine, we have a normal type of drift that's occurring in the United States right now, where we have a agency, namely our Health and Human Services Agency, which has adopted an insane way of looking at health. And so now they're sort of an authority. Now, people in healthcare understand that this is clown shoes. This is absurd. But they're governing policy that's going to affect the way we take care of people.
Yep.
And it's something that we kind of already saw in COVID, for example. This is kind of hard for me to talk about, but I lost a significant number of nurses to the requirement for COVID vaccination. If you're a nurse and you understand how vaccinations work, you find that blatantly absurd. Not in the sense of, I would say, I can say that there are genuine concerns that we have, and just like any medical procedure, a vaccination becomes weighing the benefits versus the potential of a downside. That's every medical procedure. But there's this mentality that sort of elevates this, and my fear is that if we don't have a methodology in which to verify our source of information, or to make sure it's coming from a legitimate source, and constantly referring back to that source, you will have a drift in the way that AI provides information to clinical professionals.
Right.
And so what I like about his thing is that it's keeping track of the thing. So like what I could depend on, for example, for this system to do, if I'm giving it this idea that the goal is to protect people from illness or protect people from a particular disease, and it's looking at what is the best course of action, then when it's giving me the information that I need, it's going to look for the things that either it has done before that worked or didn't work, or in this case, it wants the things that work, or it's going to look at the things that aren't supported in a way that makes, like, it doesn't have a way of determining the probability because there's not data, for example. It doesn't want to look at something that's untested and say, this is how we solve this, because if you do that, you're going to end up making a huge mistake.
Yeah.
So, in a way, by guiding and having these guardrails in place, it allows me to have the security of knowing that when I'm trying to collectively take a selection of data and determine what a potential problem this patient will have in the future, it's not going to fall on junk science that's untested. Because if it doesn't have data, it's not going to favor no data over data.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if that's going to be the case with LLMs and these models they're forcing. I don't have that security, because it's hard for me to talk about this because it makes Americans look stupid. But our government used LLMs to write policy. It made up studies.
All right.
It literally, like, pulled them out of thin air, gave them names, and they published them because, of course, who in American administration is going to go, oh, let me make sure these studies exist? That was terrifying. And hearing you talk about how it will discard information that it knows or can't guarantee is going to provide data necessary to make a probabilistic determination is like, it's speaking to my soul. It makes me feel like that there's a chance that we can survive it if we get the right system. And so, to me, that's something that I would tell somebody is like, look, I know what you're thinking. You saw that we published Health and Human Services stuff with made up studies that an LLM gave them. And if you see something like that, you're thinking, how am I going to run a company on this? And then they'll be like, yeah, you're right. I don't know. But here's the biggest problem in the United States that we have is that, you know, we have a lot of government overreach, and that could actually meet some resistance. But in countries where you won't meet that resistance, like, for example, the EU or Australia, you're literally going to change the trajectory of healthcare, because now the ability to extrapolate data at superhuman speeds and piece it together and come together with a data backed prognosis, for example, allows you to use all of that energy to focus on the things that now lacks in healthcare. Like,
Right.
we don't have to document anymore, really. I mean, we do to an extent, but the amount of documentation that we need is greatly reduced. I can go into a room and sit with a patient and hold their hand in a crisis
Yeah.
and tell them they're going to be okay.
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
I'm not over here trying to make sure that an insurance company pays for it, or that they can afford the medication, or that I have to wonder if you know, the data that was based on was somehow not 100%. You have to have those mechanisms in place for something like healthcare. iPhones, what are you going to do? You're going to make an iPhone that is goes out of date every 2 years. That was a joke, because that really happens. But I mean, not a big deal. It's annoying that I have to go to the phone every 2 years. I get that, but at the end of the day, it's nobody's life. You know, it's just me being inconvenienced. Healthcare is a totally different animal, and the fact that, I mean, just everything that Adam has described here shows so much thoughtfulness, so much mindfulness of the importance of clarity, of verifiability, of protection. I mean, it speaks directly to everything that makes me who I am, which is somebody who I deeply care about other human beings. And I don't see why we allow people to suffer for no reason.
Mhm.
I think that there are some people that suffer because the world is unjust, and sometimes we choose to suffer because we think there's a cause worth suffering for. We may
Right.
throw ourselves into a war against a fascist regime because we know that if we can stop them, then we can keep people safe. But that's a choice that we make. When you're on the receiving end of healthcare, you don't have the choice of whether the data is verified or the data is reliable.
Yeah.
And you have to depend on something, and the humans are really bad at making sure that's the case. And so, to me, I'm still in the formative, like taking it and integrating it into my psyche right now, because
Right.
this is
Right.
the first time I'm hearing some of the details. But my immediate feeling is security,
Yeah.
and
That's
I
all.
think that's a powerful thing, that if you present this in the right way to people in healthcare, they will feel the same way. Now, my other concern is that my people, the compliance people, we're losing ground in the United States. They don't really care. What they want is the appearance of compliance. They want us to look like we are trying to comply.
Hmm.
They're more concerned about, at the end of the day, how that affects bottom line. And I'm
Mm.
battling it every single day. And I almost feel like if we could somehow slip it under the radar and get this as part of our systems, that we would be all like, we'd be able to say, look, we have this ally that just told us you're an idiot, and we need to focus on this. It gives me like some way of battling against this this evil empire of American healthcare, because I feel sometimes like I can't appeal to emotion. They don't really. I mean, at the end of the day, they see people that are diagnoses. They see people that are medicines that cost money. That's what they literally are seeing people as this liability
Right.
on their books. They want to collect all the money to provide healthcare, but they don't want to spend the money on healthcare. They want to keep it. So they have record profits. And you feel like you're just constantly bashing your head against a wall. And and honestly, when I first conceived of AI in healthcare and they came and talked to me about how it helps doctors, I go, that's really cool. I get to release some of the stress on my nurses. But when it came down to it, it really wasn't, because my nurses are running into the same thing. They're seeing patients that are coming out of the hospital because they didn't want to pay for their treatment. There's these things that just tear us apart,
Yeah.
are occurring against our better will and judgment. So I don't know. Just processing it in the moment. It's like I feel like even though I don't think that you were thinking of healthcare when you did it, but for the first time, the concerns that we have as healthcare professionals are being listened to. Like, your system represents everything that we would look for in an AI before it was an adopted thing. We would want to have a hard no harm,
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do something like, I'm not going to prescribe a medication that costs $540 a month to an elderly person on a fixed income, when there's a medication that is 98% as effective that they could pay $4 at Walmart for.
Yeah.
Just because some girl in a short skirt and some pins came in and told me how awesome it was.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, we're going to take you out on a cruise, and we're going to do all these cool things for you so that you will prescribe this medication.
Yeah.
It's insane. And you're like sanity in a world that's insane to me. And that's what
And I think
Yeah, just on that, Chris, I know what you're saying, and I mean it's a beautiful ideology, but we also got to be a bit, realistically grounded. And I was sort of saying it's like it needs to be optimal for the organization, so it needs to be financially optimal for the insurance company in there, right? It needs to be financially beneficial to obviously the pharmaceutical companies, because if they don't produce the product, it's not going to get you $4 Walmart versus your 540. I get it, right? There's a customer part, like, and there's that there, but then it's like, then it becomes a fiduciary obligation of the doctor, the medical thing, right? So and then it goes and it sort of filters all this way down, right? So it's become systemic, right? And yes, they try to bring AI into doing that, but it's like, how do and this is what we've built, right, with Civitas, and it's the objective, and even with Aegis, the whole thing, that the objective with Aegis is to provide that ongoing operational optimization for organizations. Businesses are profitable, medical professionals are happy, nursing staff and people down the bottom, everybody's getting filled through. And I'm just using now the medical stuff, but I'm saying in any industry, because if you don't satisfy all those requirements, right, the house of cards just it implodes on itself, because it's like it's not viable, right? It's there. And so achieving that in the most efficient way, right, is what we're doing. It's kind of like, okay, these are the agreed guardrails that we've sort of come to in the industry, right? It's like these are the fundamentals, and this is what we're coming to. It's like, okay, and a part of that is also the optimization of making it cost efficient and everything else like that, right? It's like, okay, so the pharmaceutical companies need to sell the product and force it along, and so forth, right? So it's got that efficiency and stuff like that there. It's like, so it's almost like, and dare I say, it's kind of like optimization, right? Because all of a sudden it's no longer the pharmaceutical reps going out there and saying, hey, buy this product, right? Or buy, market this product out. It's now the medical professional, the doctors are sitting and going, okay, what is the most efficient, product? What's going to give you the best result for this client, right? For this patient. And it's almost like the GEO stuff. Like it's like the AI is now saying, look, you've got this one, and these are the benefits to it, and then you've got this one and this one. Now, depending on the patient's case, right, based on the medical information and then all the guardrail and everything like that, it can recommend it. And some cases, the $540 a month medication might be the one that has the high probability of success for the patient, right? Now that becomes a preferential decision by the medical professional is giving his opinion, and then the patient is saying, okay, it's not just because I'm getting all the perks and everything else like that. So then that puts the onus back on the pharmaceutical companies to create products that are going to achieve better results. Yeah, so this creates this thing, and this is going back to the beginning. It's like we're creating a better society, right? So the AI system, tethered to the guardrails, the Aegis guardrails, is making us a better society where it's keeping us accountable too. So rather than going, let's create something for better bottom line profitability, let's do the other way around. Let's create something that's going to give us that efficiency. So that's why I'm saying, so it's exciting what you're saying, and I think it's a solvable problem, but it's just, yeah.
I mean, it was on the fly, so I apologize.
Yeah,
it's just I was going with feeling rather than having.
Can you all hear me?
It, but feeling is good too. I like both. So
yeah.
Can you all hear me?
Oh yeah. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, hold on real quick, Adam. I need to remove you. Like, there's some type of echo cancellation. Your echo cancellation's on, and I just want to make sure that doesn't continue to happen. We're going an hour 45 minutes, so we'll wind down. We'll start winding down, but I'm gonna remove you, join back in, because I cannot turn your echo cancellation on since you're already in here.
Okay.
So let me just do that real quick. All right, go ahead, Chris. What were you saying while he comes back?
I have difficulty on the spot, so I was.
No, it's totally cool. I didn't know if you were right in the middle of the thought.
But I do agree with what he's saying. I mean, it's going to be a hard sell to go into a pharmaceutical company and say this AI is going to make you ethical and your sales are going to increase by 55%.
Right.
You can't sell that. You've got to find the moderate path, and so he's absolutely right. I tend to be a bit of a pie in the sky kind of guy. I'm that's the way I am. I have very hard ethical constraints that I like to govern my interactions. So, but I do understand the practicality. I do think that there's an interesting opportunity because I think it is public information. It's what it is de-identified Medicare claims data. And basically, it takes the claims and for the United States, they make it a public thing. If you could get your hands on it, a neat little experiment for your agents, if you wanted to do that, which I think would be quite interesting, is something that a company kind of suggested they were going to try to do, but then I think they got bought up and became an insurance, and they used the same basic principles to do auto denials. Because evil empire, but you could take the claims data and you could actually see the outcomes of patients and cross-reference them according to similar diagnoses, medications used, and stuff like that. And this could literally be used by physicians to to look at outcomes for people with similar diagnoses of different medications and see statistically which one had better outcomes based on those same diagnoses. You could even include genetic information in there if you had access to that. You literally could, because of the way that AI works, you could collaborate on all the things that can be formulated into data. And the more data you have, the more accurate the projection and the prognostication becomes. This company that I was looking at originally was founded to determine hospice diagnoses, because in America, we believe that you're only entitled to have care that makes sure that you don't hurt, have nausea, or do other things if you have 6 months or less to die. It's an arbitrary thing they came up with.
Yeah.
And so they use that a lot to deny claims after the fact. So you provide the care and then they take the money back. So what they were gearing it at is sort of a practical concern that Adam is dealing with, is they were doing a prognostication for the sake of 6 months, so that hospices could admit patients and know within, at that time, it was like 97% accuracy of their prognosis being 6 months or less.
Mm-hmm.
But if a system could do that and apply that to the principle of treatment modalities and success rates,
Right.
that would be a really cool thing for a system to do. And it could be a neat experiment for Adam's system to see if he were to get his hands on that data, what kind of information he can extract from it. It'll be de-identified, so it doesn't violate any privacy rules.
Right.
But it's an interesting dynamic that I think healthcare would also benefit from. I know that if I were somebody were coming to talk to me about AI in healthcare and they showed me that, I'd be like, wow, where do I sign? So so anyway, that's just a thought. But I totally agree with that Adam saying there has to be a moderate path, and I'm not somebody that tends to be very moderate, so that's probably my weakness.
But it's not even, I would say it's not even the moderate part. Really, but what he's describing here too is there are some ground rules, some ethical ground rules. Don't kill somebody, right? Don't do horrible things, which we can put into the kernel, and then we can use, because you can cure more people and be profitable. You can cure people and be profitable. And we can do that by forcing the AI to come up with a new paradigm of, hey, healthier people actually creates more wealth because of what, right? And that system that Adam has created can create these thoughts and processes with the guardrails within an ecosystem, right? But it will require a paradigm shift. We're never going to get to the answer that we want to say, hey, we need healthier people and need to just make more money selling drugs. That's just never going to work, right? But if we put it into a system to say, here are our ethical constraints, and now do your thing to make the company effective and operative, but also cure lives and help people out, that's where the special sauce comes in. What do we call that? The sauce in between, Adam. We've seen that. That's becoming a term. That's where the sauce comes. And that is what I'm understanding from your side, Chris, seems the most exciting about the system that's been built. Does that sound right, or am I off?
No, that's absolutely right. And I will say that I do love, I don't know if it's, I'm sure it is intentional because it's too good, the symbolism that he's built it as a small civilization of agents and governments.
Yes.
I think that is a beautiful testament. You create this small civilization that runs effectively and fairly to help us run a civilization that's effective and fair. So
beautiful.
Kudos. I mean, it's I can't imagine doing it any better.
So thanks, man. And Adam, I'll let you go, but let's do this. We usually go through so interesting things in the last week. We're already at 2 hours. I think we've had an amazing, unbelievable conversation. It was so cool to do it in a different vertical. I think instead of going through our top 10, I think I'll turn it over to you, Adam. Kind of give your reactions to what Chris said, give your final thoughts. Then I'll turn it over to you, Chris. You can give your final thoughts on just the conversation, reflect a little bit. I'll give my final thoughts and we'll call it a day. How does that sound, gentlemen?
Yeah, beautiful,
Go
beautiful.
ahead, Adam.
Yeah, look, I think so, saying Chris, and it's like, and in summary, I think we can get to that point a lot faster, and it's just a matter of, yes, there's the ethical parts, but it's like, how does this show me that this is going to be effectively optimizing for what I need, right? As far as my answerable to my shareholders, to what I'm doing, and delivering that. That's my fundamentals, right? And as a result, also saving more lives, right? And but yeah, and so that was just in the summary of that. I think the main part is the and I appreciate you sort of identifying that's it. It's a civilization, right? It's a digital civilization, and it's making us a better society. That's the magical part that we all want to be a part of, and I've really enjoyed the conversation, really enjoyed the dialoguing. It's been beautiful. Yeah.
Chris, go for it.
Yeah, and I absolutely concur. I was pretty enamored with it when I came into this. I'm super like in love with it right now. I want to take it out, give it a nice dinner. Nothing sorted, just talk, just have a good time. To me, it's weird. Where I live is very heavily sided with the things that are troubling me right now. The
Right.
people here are very supportive of the things that are happening. I don't get to talk to a lot of people that share my hyper empathy and my beliefs. It's very rare. I feel very isolated sometimes. So this has really helped me kind of feel better about the world because and it's been building to that just talking to you guys on LinkedIn, but this is more personal. So I've really enjoyed it, and it really has been a very positive experience. I can't wait to tell my wife about it because she was like, "What's a podcast like?" And I said, "I have no idea because I've never really been on a podcast before." So, but it's one of those things that it makes the world feel different when you leave it, and I think that is in a positive way, and I think that that's something that we can hope for in any of these interactions is to walk away feeling like there's that the world is just a little bit better, and and I thank you guys for that. I mean, that's something you guys didn't even have to extend to me, but you did it, and I'm very thankful of that.
100%.
Yeah, that's
man,
beautiful. Appreciate it.
Really beautiful, and it means a lot to us. And I have tons of thoughts and comments. I'll start by saying, Chris, you were beautiful today, man. Like you never really been on a podcast. You were gracious. You were thankful. You had insightful thoughts and conversations. And I saw your heart more than anything else, and that speaks to my heart. And Adam's the same way too. But one of the things that was really interesting to me is what we are trying to, because to Adam's point, as beautiful as this system is that has been created, there's still a practical element to you're a startup and you got to sell a product, right? We're in this society that is how we need to bring this beautiful thing to light. What was interesting to me is the way that, from a medical standpoint, you went to the overarching system when we're trying to concentrate on a very finite point, which rightfully so, we're doing it because we're trying to find product market fit and all these different things. But this is the first time that I had an interaction with somebody that you immediately got it. It actually didn't take that much explaining to you. Now, obviously, you've written papers about this and you're excited about it, but you were able to see the benefit and the beauty of, hey, we can have ethics and constraints, but then also let AI do its thing and get the efficiencies that we want. I think that is, I'm excited to get through our next, Adam and I keep on talking about the next month. And we've got a lot of conversations going on, and we're going to be able to start getting some data and some exposure and some things to feedback on which the direction we go. But this conversation and your insight, Chris, just got me excited about the full potential the system Adam's built, because I do think the huge unlock is when we get Civitas, which is kind of the agentic form, right? And the kernel with ethics and the governance, and AI being able to play in this box and use this causal thinking, not the probabilistic thinking, to come up with something beautiful, novel, and exciting, and please multiple parties, which humans seem to can't do right now. And for you to be able to see that, the potential of that, gets just me even more jazzed up. And the last thing I always say, no matter if it's my personal podcast or this podcast, you just 2 new friends, my man. You got Adam and Mikey in your corner. Let's keep on collaborating. Let's keep on figuring out how to put humans at the center of what is the biggest change in human history happening at light speed. And let's keep on interacting on LinkedIn. Let's keep on trying to figure out how we can help each other out, man.
Amen. Yep. And like I said, if you guys are talking to somebody in healthcare and you need somebody to do a vouch for you or whatever, I'm more than happy to do that. I think I may have crossed over to true believer status, which means that the world's in trouble, because when I truly believe in something, it's zealotry at its highest.
That's awesome.
So,
hey, we think healthcare is a good application for the product for sure, or the whole system, not even a product. Let's say what Adam built. So we're all ears if you've got ideas on how we can turn that into narrative and start having conversations. So let's keep on talking.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Let me know if you need anything. As you can tell, I write a lot. I do, like I said, I use AI to help me formulate my thoughts. I have a condition called aphantasia. It's not really a bad condition. I just don't generate mental images. So my mind is very chaotic. What I found that AI has done for me is allowed me to be more efficient in things like writing, because I don't always, my thoughts get so jumbled that it's hard to organize them. So by being able to do things like outlining with it and things like that, it makes my writing much more precise and cogent. And so I'm an example of what AI and humanity can do together. Not that it's that impressive, but I mean, literally, I work a full-time job and I'm able to write all that crap.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm also a student right now. I'm finishing my bachelor's of science in nursing. So
you're doing it all, man. Yeah,
it's amazing. So AI, like I said, I'm a huge proponent of it. I think that we need people like Adam guiding our use of it. And that's how I feel now. And like I said, I'm sold.
We appreciate you, man. And thank you so much for spending the time. You gave us 2 hours of your life. That is the most valuable thing you have, is time, and you just gave it to us. And with that being said, episode 4 of Guardrails was an absolute banger. Thank you, Chris. Again, Adam, I'll be talking to you later. We love you all. Thanks for the many people that tuned in on LinkedIn. We will talk to you